You just said that a huge amount of men between the age of 15 and 50 will not pass on their genes. They will effectively die out of the gene mating pool. So people will hear that and many people will go, well, that's evolution.
Yeah.
Should society intervene? You know, in the short term, we're going to have a lot of men who are disillusioned, that become incels, find themselves in pockets of the internet, are resentful, all those kinds of things. But should society intervene to course correct that? Should we put systems in place to make sure that those men meet partners?
I'm going to answer that question with a question. If, let's say, a huge swath of people are out from cancer, should we intervene with that?
Yes.
If a huge swath of people are out from like a virus, should we intervene
100%.
with that? So I think there are two important things.
One is slightly different though.
One is about
yeah.
So one is like if a human being is dying, we should step in. But natural selection isn't necessarily about, this is what's really tricky about it.
So women are realizing that a lot of these podcast bros that they thought were not red pill are really red pill. And this Diary of a CEO guy, he seems innocent and he's not as bad as the other ones, but he is something much darker lurking underneath it, where they all pretty much have the same mindset and they're trying to figure out how to get women to be with men and how to force women to have more kids for the system, to keep feeding the system, the patriarchy, because they need workers. They're trying to use women's bodies to incubate their workers. They don't see women or children as humans. They just see it as dollar signs. And women are starting to realize this. And thankfully, more men are starting to talk about it and realize it. And I'm going to put some of their clips in this video too. But for women, I would say that we should be terrified that these men are thinking like this and talking about us like on a global stage, like we're not human. And this is why I tell women to arm yourselves all the time, because men like him, Jordan Peterson and Scott Galloway, they seem all smart and intelligent. But the bottom line is they have this like warped mindset towards women and how we have no real like autonomy or ownership of our own lives and bodies, and we can't control ourselves. Like we can't, we're just not human. Like, I don't know how else to put it, y'all, but it's so many responses to this interview. I'm going to get into it. I'm not going to talk too much, but if y'all haven't seen it, y'all, it was crazy. I couldn't watch all of it. I could only watch the clips of it because I've heard it all before. This is what MAGA is talking about, except MAGA doesn't want everybody to have more babies. They only want certain people to have more babies. But if men are thinking like in a hive mind, like MAGA, and MAGA are actually in power and they're changing laws to make this stuff happen, women should be terrified.
Society have a responsibility to correct this? Bro is seriously asking if we should intervene in the problem of fewer men being able to have children. Now, Dr. K, to his credit, says no. Society does not have a responsibility to remedy this.
Do people have the right to reproduce? The answer is basically no, because for men, that requires the consent of someone else.
A person's right to reproduce never overrides someone's right to not want to reproduce with them. Men do not have a right to children. Period. Full stop. This brings us to Chris Williamson. If Dr. K is the doctor telling you that men are starving, Chris Williamson is the pharmacist handing out the cure. And the cure is, you guessed it, women's compliance. Chris is a frequent guest on the podcast. Recently, Bartlett asked him how he would solve the love crisis. And Chris's advice for women? Cultivate receptiveness.
One other thing I think that is maybe a slightly unusual strategy that women can cultivate is receptiveness. So I think, especially in a post-Me Too world, a lot of guys are very scared of approaching, guys have always been scared of approaching women, but in a post-Me Too world, they've been taught that anything short of a hell yeah is a no, get away from me, so that you don't make the girl feel uncomfortable. Guys already were quite nervous going up and talking to you. So you have to treat a man and his interest kind of like slightly inexperienced golden retriever. It needs to be very loud, very obvious signals of interest from you.
A golden retriever? He's telling grown women to treat adult men like puppies. Don't scare him. He's just a little puppy. Do you understand how insulting this is, asshole? Not just to women, but also to men. He is infantilizing half of the human race in order to justify why men can't handle rejection.
In the Middle Ages, or aristocratic Middle Ages, ladies would drop a handkerchief in front of a gentleman. Oh, mom. Oh, in 2025 in New York, there are women stealing Finance Bros salads, finding their names from the salad on Instagram and then messaging them and saying, sorry, I accidentally took your salad. Like, that's the 2025 equivalent of dropping the handkerchief. If you like that guy and he's not approaching you, maybe assume that he doesn't know that you like him.
He wants you to do the equivalent of dropping the handkerchief, like we're in a goddamn Jane Austen novel. He wants us to do this to signal to men that it is safe to approach. Because apparently in a post-Me Too world, men are too terrified to speak to a woman unless she's waving a white flag. Bro, please. Give me a fucking break.
There are so many things about the most recent Diary of a CEO episode that really bothered me. And if you haven't seen it, in the most recent episode, Stephen Bartlett brings on Dr. K to talk about this whole male loneliness epidemic. And honestly, as a bisexual woman who has gladly given up relationships with men to partner with a woman, I have so many thoughts in general about this concept of male loneliness. But specific to this episode, what bothered me the most was when Dr. K talks about how we want men to show emotion, but then we don't accept when they show anger, and that's not fair. And he uses the example of him and his wife. He says, if I get in an argument with my wife, it is perfectly socially acceptable for her to get sad and cry. But it's not if I get angry and yell. It's villainized if I get angry and yell. And then the two of them go on to talk about how that's unfair. And the fact that these apparently intelligent men have a whole conversation about this and at no point distinguish between an emotion and the way you respond to an emotion is crazy to me. Because let's be clear, yelling is not an emotion. Yelling is a choice. Anger, sadness, that's an emotion. And totally natural. Everybody, men, women, non-binary people, everybody experiences anger. But how you respond to anger is a choice. And if you respond to anger with aggression, with yelling, with physical violence, then that is a problem. There is a huge difference between the two. And the fact that they didn't realize that and distinguish that is really mind-boggling to me. And like I said, I'm bisexual, so I've dated both men and women. I'm not going to talk about my experiences with men because I don't want to generalize. But this is what anger looks like in my relationship with my girlfriend. She gets angry and she tells me, hey babe, I'm angry and I'm frustrated. I'm going to take some time and cool off, and then we can have a conversation about this. That's what that looks like. It's not yelling. It's not physical violence. It's not aggression. It's none of that. It's her communicating the emotion to me and then taking the time that she needs to cool down so we can have a productive conversation. So I'm sorry. It's not the emotion that's the problem. It's the way that you respond to the emotion. And I'm tired of these men making it our problem because they're not emotionally intelligent enough to realize that.
Diary of a CEO always this unhinged?
We're going to have a lot of men who are disillusioned, that become incels, find themselves in pockets of the internet, are resentful, all those kinds of things. But should society intervene to course correct that? Should we put systems in place to make sure that those men meet partners?
So look, most of you have seen this conversation already. For people who don't know, the context here is that this is a conversation from Diary of a CEO where Stephen Bartlett and Dr. K are discussing whether or not society needs to intervene in order to help incels, men who can't get laid, basically. There's this sort of notion of it being like, is it a right, essentially, to have your genes passed on? Now, I want to be fair for half a second. They never really clearly define what intervene means. But truthfully, that in and of itself is already part of the problem, right? I think when you leave a question like that vague, people fill in the blanks. And as we know, history isn't great when we consider what it's like when societies start intervening around women's bodies. Now, to his credit, Dr. K does eventually say that men do not have a right to a woman's body. Eventually. And this is the bit that kind of weirds me out the most, because it takes 2 minutes. From the minute Stephen Bartlett first asked the questions, there is a 2-minute long discussion. And in those 2 minutes, they muddy the water so much that you're left wondering, why does this conversation exist? What is it you want us to learn from this? Because this should have been very simple, right? It should have been questioned. Should society intervene to help men get laid? Answer, no. In fact, I'll say it should have been even shorter. There shouldn't have been a question. I think it just drives so many of us insane that we don't need these pseudo-philosophical thought experiments, you know? I think ultimately, like, the reminder just needs to be that self-improvement is really, really hard. Loneliness is really, really painful. Rejection hurts. But none of that ever justifies reframing the problem as a societal failure that needs intervention. On who needs intervening on? The problem with this, of course, is that it's all about shifting the moral weight from those who need to improve to people who aren't even really involved. This just goes hand in hand with turning women not into people, not into things that exist with agency, but into a resource to be managed. Men's inability to attract someone is not some sort of collective injustice. This is why I find any rhetoric about men like me and saying that we speak too harshly. No, you either tell them the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it needs to sound harsh, or you just lie to them softly and watch that resentment rot them from the inside. And that's what I'm seeing from so many hyper-gentile male creators on this app, and also from conversations like this. It's the same mistake. People are terrified of upsetting them, so they refuse to draw any boundaries. The reality is simple, guys. Nobody owes you anything. No one owes you any physical intimacy. No one owes you any attraction. Society does not owe you a workaround. I know that may be tough for some of you to hear. Trying to intervene is not compassion. It's a refusal to just say no to you. But yeah, if that makes me a meanie or whatever, that's fine. I just don't think the alternative is kindness to anyone. Problem is that this softness is teaching boys that their frustration is worth discussing and maybe even more important than a woman's autonomy.
Many of you have probably already seen the Diary of a CEO snippets talking about and sympathizing that majority of men, or a big percentage of them, will not be granted partners in this lifetime. I'm going to say this once. Nobody is entitled a partner. Nobody is entitled a child. This entire rhetoric really makes it feel like men are entitled to women, and that's women's responsibility, right? Women have to be with this man because it's bad for society. How about no? How about women are allowed to filter through and reject people who are not suitable for their lifestyles? They do not owe society anything. As a man or a woman, if you are not marketable in the dating space and you really want a relationship, that's your responsibility, babe. It just really feels like they're blaming women's success. Oh, if the women weren't so successful, then they could depend on a man and a man could take care of them. Instead of, why don't we adjust to the times, right? Men and women are on a more equal playing field in terms of financial stability and lifestyle. So what can we do? Not we, not I. But what can men as a whole do for each other to raise up that bar, right? To make yourselves more marketable. I guarantee you part of the equation does not include blaming women. It just feels so frustrating. Like, in a system that wasn't even designed for women to achieve, we're still getting blamed for everything. It's our fault that we're not opening our legs for these mediocre dudes. It's our fault that there is mediocre dudes. And these mediocre dudes somehow think that they're all entitled to a successful, beautiful, gorgeous, perfect woman. What are you talking about? Everybody is feeling the discomfort of this current situation. Men are not entitled partners just as much as women are not entitled partners. If you're not fit to be a partner, you're not entitled to one. I know that there's a lot of extreme parties on the feminist side. I get that. Misandry is a thing that happens. But we have to consider there is very little consequence of that. Women are not out here murdering dudes because they reject them. So then, if a woman rejects a man, is it also now her responsibility to make him feel better about it? The rhetoric feels like it's telling women, you should not turn down men because you make their lives better. Don't you want to help them? Don't you want to support them? Yes, I will support someone who doesn't actively demean me. Like, I'm sorry, I will be as empathetic as possible. I understand that people have shitty situations and people are feeling really fucking sad about the state of the dating market. But nobody is owed anything. Okay?
There's a whole generation of men that is like, we are literally watching them die out.
Good. Oh, wait, you had more to say? Okay, let's hear about it.
And then there are these other people over here who will go to therapy, who will work on themselves professionally, who will show up on dating apps. And because of the shape of their face, which cannot be fundamentally altered, or some other thing which they're not even aware of. There's this whole crop of people who I think are trying really hard. I don't think they're losers. I don't think they're like pathetic or anything like that. I think what they would trigger is exactly what we're seeing. This like existential panic, angst, even aggression, entitlement. Because if these men do not behave in this way, they're literally going to die out.
It's amazing that in a very academic way, he manages to also blame women. It's their fault because they don't like the shape of their faces. These aren't losers. These guys go to therapy. It has nothing to do with the shape of their faces or their physical structure. It's because they have no personality. They have no interests. They have no ability to relate to people because they actively avoid becoming friends with women. That's all it takes. That is literally all it takes. Try to become friends with women and don't try to them. And you will learn so much. You will grow. And you will be someone that women want to date. Because you will understand your male privilege. You will understand other people's perspectives. You will build empathy and compassion. And you'll just be a better person. Hey man, if you can't meet women and you don't understand why, try making friends with them. Try finding women that you're not trying to have sex with and just be their friend. And listen to them. Have conversations with them. And of course, if you're just an incel, then you should be lonelier and you will die alone. And we will all be happier. And this is Bacon.
I've already given our solution to this problem. It is that we just won't sleep with them anymore and then eventually they will be gone. That's our solution. That's how we fix this issue. If you want to fix it in any other way, guys, then feel free. Step in. You come up with the programs and projects that will sort this out. You put your labour and your time and your care and attention into fixing this issue. But women have had enough. And actually, we've already come up with a plan. And the plan is that we mutually agree that we are not going to give those men any more attention or go to bed with them. And hopefully, eventually, they will just die out and we won't need to worry about them anymore. Because that's what happens when you do not adapt, when you do not evolve, when you don't read the room and change. We don't reward you for that. You are left behind. You are ignored because you thought that you were too smart and too clever and too important to have to change and adapt so that people will like you. So we don't like you. That's our solution. If you've got a better idea, you feel free. Implement it. But we'll just be carrying on doing this. All right? Thanks. Bye.
You just said that a huge amount of men between the age of 15 and 50 will not pass on their genes. They will effectively die out of the gene mating pool.
Good. Some of these gene pools need to be drained. But let's listen further.
So people will hear that and many people will go, well, that's evolution.
Yeah.
Should society intervene? You know, in the short term, we're going to have a lot of men who are disillusioned, that become incels, find themselves in pockets of the internet, are resentful, all those kinds of things. But should society intervene to course correct that? Should we put systems in place to make sure that those men meet?
What kind of systems can you put in place to guarantee that incel men meet partners? Unless we're talking about increasing the therapy budget and the hygiene budget and it just workout budget or something like that. What systems are we talking about right here, right? I feel like with that mentality right there, it gives off the mindset that everybody is entitled to a partner, which can lead people down the incel pathway. When you get rejected constantly, you even feel like I am entitled to a woman, I'm entitled to a partner, and these people are not giving it to me, and I deserve it. So that increases the anger right there. What kind of systems could you put in place to counteract that right there, right?
I'm going to answer that question with a question. If, let's say, a huge swath of people are dying out from cancer, should we intervene with that?
Yes.
If a huge swath of people are dying out from, like, a virus, should we intervene
100%.
with that? So I think there are two important things. One
It's slightly
is
different, though.
One is about...
Yeah.
So one is, like, if a human being is dying, we should step in. But natural selection isn't necessarily about... This is what's really tricky.
Now, I am glad that Steve said it's slightly different, though. You comparing mating with cancer and deaths and viruses and things like that. Yeah. I feel like as society has progressed and time has came, right, men have to work harder to get women. There are a lot of men out here who feel like that's not fair. And honestly, truth be told, I was one of them, right? Growing up, they tell you all you had to do is get a good job and do this and work out and you'll get a girl, right? But that doesn't always work. Nowadays, women actually want you to be nice to them. Not all of them. Not all of them. But women want you to be nice and emotionally intelligent. There are a lot of men out there who are like, damn, man, I gotta be emotionally intelligent too? Damn. I can't just go to the gym and hit the weights and get some money and get some women. Yeah, if you get your money up, you can get women, of course, but those women will probably only want you for your money, and you will know that, and you will also resent them. I don't know what system you can put in place to guarantee that somebody gets a partner, because that just doesn't happen unless you're forcing them, right? You gonna force them? What are we talking about here? To me, as someone who's diagnosed with a personality disorder, y'all, I have narcissistic personality disorder, right? And people hate narcissists. But I worked on myself. I've been in psychotherapy for 8 years. I've worked on myself physically, mentally, emotionally, all of the other good stuff, y'all. The system that needs to be put in place is to regulate people who are spewing this dumb shit that men are entitled to women. You're entitled to a partner and you have to do less work and they should be submissive and blah, 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 boo, 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 beep, 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 right? Because when you get rejected and you get angry, then you get online and you see that incel weirdo shit sometimes, you can see how easy it would be to fall into that path. Sorry, fellas, you got to work on yourself. We have to work on ourselves. Before y'all call me a simp, beta, pander, or whatever, y'all, I've been married for like 10 years, almost 11 years now. I'm good, right? I want the next generation of men to just understand that, yeah, well, you can work on yourself. Just to be emotionally intelligent, be nice. You can be masculine and be nice as well, right? Because that male bravado, that weird macho shit doesn't work on everybody. I truly want the incel folks to work on themselves and just be better.
Do they ever think that women don't want to give up everything that we've worked for in order to have children? I mean, look at these two men. They are at the top of their game. And if they had kids, their lives would barely change. Meanwhile, women have to carry the child for 9 months, have postpartum, and become the default parent by default. When Stephen interviews people about this topic, the blame is always put on women. And I will preach from the rooftops. If men can show up to be 50-50 equal partners with household and child labor, then women will talk. But that's not how it goes. I see on TikTok, I see in the world that women do everything, and I am not signing up for the task.
See, society is already intervening with men not able to find women to have their babies, which is what they want. They don't want a partner or to have children and to be a father. They want someone to have their babies. It's just not in the right ways. Right now, we see the world becoming more conservative, which benefits men and takes away rights from women. We also see in places like America, these draconian laws being reinstated or overturned in the Supreme Court, which brings danger to women. And what most men are looking for are not equal partners to raise a child with and become fathers. They want women to have their babies. We also see a tremendous amount of nonprofits and charities trying to work on this mental health crisis in men at the grassroots levels, but men just don't want those solutions. If we really want to solve this problem, we need to make life more affordable and raising a child more affordable, because right now nobody can afford it. We need to make pregnancy and becoming a wife or a partner to a man much safer, because right now it is one of the most dangerous things to a woman's life. And we need to start raising men and having men become worthy of becoming husbands and fathers, because right now we just want women to serve men and bear this responsibility for us and not be equal participants in this partnership and in raising the child. So right now, there aren't a lot of reasons for women to want to have a child with a man. And until you address those things and make having a child a much safer and realistic experience, we're only going to have this crazy solution that they're suggesting, that we go back to the Handmaid's Tale and institute laws that pretty much force women to give birth for men. And frankly, that's disgusting and horrendous.
Is anyone else starting to feel like Diary of a CEO is just intellectual red pill content? Because what do you mean we have to intervene in the men not passing their genes on? What does intervention into the men needing to pass their genes down look like?
Have you seen this very disturbing Diary of a CEO podcast episode where they're talking about should society intervene in the declining birth rate? And they're talking about how men who can't pass on their genes to the next generation are suffering a mass extinction event. And then they compare it to, well, should society intervene if a lot of people are dying of cancer? We need to talk about how insidious it is that misogynistic red pill content that boils down to men being entitled to have a woman. That's what it boils down to, is being wrapped up in this pseudo-intellectual package by people who have the word doctor in front of their name on social media, and they sit in a nice, well-lit podcast studio so that it all looks very legit, and they have millions of followers, and they have had very high-level, high-profile people on the podcast before, but then they sneak in guests like this, and this is what they lead the conversation into. And it's very disturbing. This is literal Handmaid's Tale bullshit. And I have said this before, that the male loneliness epidemic is just natural selection at work, because that's how natural selection is supposed to work. No one is entitled to pass along their genes to the next generation, but these men are talking about it as if it's a problem that women need to solve for men. And it's especially annoying when you think about the fact that there are so many steps that society could take. If they want a societal intervention in the declining birth rate, why aren't they talking about, oh, let's make housing more affordable, let's make sure people are paid better, let's make childcare more affordable, let's institute paternity leave for all parents? Like, why are you steering the conversation towards Gilead instead of all of those things? Oh, is it because you just want to find a way to blame women for men's problems? Yeah, that's obvious. Also, if they're so concerned about these men who are not passing along their genes, why don't y'all just go to a sperm bank? There you go. You can pass along your genes in a cup today. Or hire a surrogate, or find a woman to platonically co-parent with. Find a consenting person to do this with. And if you cannot, then you don't get to pass along your genes. You are not owed that. No one is entitled to that.
So fascinating. When women are dealing with femicide, it's not seen as an issue that needs a sit-down conversation, needs to have so many people getting involved. The minute men can't get laid, it's something that everyone needs to be aware of. Everyone needs to discuss how we could stop this and prevent this from prolonging further, as if men are owed women's bodies. And this is something that I have noticed as well, that it is true. A lot of men do feel they are owed a woman's body and her womb. This goes all the way up the chain, but it also trickles down all the way down the chain. I remember a few years ago, I had this man who was very, very interested in me. Now, he had tried for many years, maybe since I was 23 years old. But I remember I did say to myself, do you know what, let me not be so horrible, let me at least allow him to take me on a date. So I went on a date with him, and I just knew it wasn't for me. Like, I knew it wasn't for me, but I was willing to at least give it a chance. Do you see what I mean here? Like, as a woman, I felt like I had to at least give him a chance. If a man didn't find me attractive, do you think he would at least give me a chance? No, he wouldn't. He would have told me, get out of here, I'm not interested. But as a woman, I felt like, let me at least give him a chance, because it's just what you have to do. If a man's really persistent, you at least give him a chance. 2 weeks after, he asked me on a second date, and I just told him, like, this is not for me. I can't go on a second date with you, and I don't want to waste your time. At this point, he told his grandmother, he's told his mother about me, he told his dad about me, he told everyone about me. For why, I don't know. He's already planned it, and I need to make my way. And I told him, I'm not coming. I'm dating someone else. I'm not coming. You know, it was just a date. I didn't say we have a future together. It was just a date. This man rang my phone 65 times within 2 hours. I told him I'm seeing someone else. And he said, yeah, you're seeing someone else, but you went on a date with me and we promised we'll do a second date. Why have you done that? The fact that because you've been persistent, I owed you a relationship, my time, a second date, and potentially me. That was crazy to me. But I remember him saying something during that time. He said, you're lucky that I actually have real feelings for you, and I actually want to take you seriously. Most men would treat you like shit. I actually want to take you seriously, and this is how you treat me? What? What do you mean? You're lucky that I actually want to treat you well. Most men would treat you like shit because most men don't care. But you'd be surprised how many men do believe this. They believe that you owe them a date if they are being persistent. And it made me think to myself, like, is this an alliance that men rely on? The fact that most men, as a base, will treat women like shit. So when they finally give you crumbs of a little bit of attention, they feel like if a man is suffering, if a man wants you, if a man needs something from you, if a man says he's attracted to you, he wants to take you seriously, and he thinks you're his wife, you are to at least give him a chance to prove himself. I think this is why when Steven says, and that guy on his show say things like, what do we do about this? Because there's a bunch of men who are not going to get laid. Men express emotions through physical aggression, and women will just cry, but one will get police called on them. Who's to blame for that? Men, start to point the finger back instead of pointing the finger to women and asking how women are supposed to fix this. It's not ours to fix. We've been fixing. This is now on men to fix.
Short term, we're going to have a lot of men who are disillusioned, that become incels, find themselves in pockets of the internet, are resentful, all those kinds of things. But should society intervene to course correct that? Should we put systems in place to make sure that those men meet partners?
Oh dear. Where do we begin with this one? It almost sounds as if the current system that's been put in place is not benefiting men. I said this a while ago and I'm going to repeat it. Patriarchy is going to end up hurting men more than it does women. Because ever since women have been liberating themselves from the patriarchy, fighting the disadvantages that they face, making more choices for themselves, having more autonomy, facing less control for men, they have decided to do what they think is worthwhile for them. They are choosing what they want in a partner. It's no longer men that get to decide a woman's worth and value. That's how it used to be. Women are not standing for that anymore, and now it's men who are complaining. And to say that we should be intervening somehow and putting systems in place, what are you suggesting, Handmaid's Tale? This is really, really hurtful to see that on one of the biggest, if not the biggest podcasts out there, that two people are talking about how they can support the incel community. Not to mention that the idea of passing on your genes has always been from a sense of ownership anyway. Men are not entitled to have their genes passed on. Men are not entitled to be in relationships. Men are not entitled to have sex with women. The problem is that there are other clips within this interview about how he is explaining that sex is something that is needed and not necessarily something that is wanted. When you place that opinion, because it's not a fact, on men and women, you are still saying that men are entitled to have something that they don't already have. We can survive without having sex in a relationship. If women are saying what their standards are in a relationship or for a potential partner, it's up to men to decide whether or not they want to adhere to those standards or just accept the fact that they won't be in a relationship with a woman. And isn't it interesting how the turns have tabled? Men making the decisions for women, men telling women where their value should be placed. And now that women are actually saying what they're looking for, it's men that don't like it because they are losing control. Control that they should never have had in the first place. What baffles me is that men have a choice, believe it or not. They have a choice to better themselves. They have a choice to improve in certain aspects of their life, whether it's their personality or the things that they want to strive to be in the future. But instead, they'd rather still try and control women and tell them that their standards are ridiculous. And so if I was a man right now looking for a partner and these were my concerns, why won't you try and look inwards rather than trying to see what women should be doing differently? We also have to acknowledge that the conversation is very heavily on the way that men's genes won't be passed down. What about the woman's genes? Like, this surely can't be just a problem for men. If genes are going to get passed down, you need to be able to have a baby for your genes to be passed down. But of course, it has to be about men. It has to be about men's needs. It has to be about men's wants, and not necessarily how women are having much more freedom than they ever used to have, and men don't like it. The male loneliness epidemic, whether you believe it exists or not, there's enough men out there that thinks it does, is just natural selection. This is an extremely harmful conversation that was had about how they think that we need to find solutions and ways for men's genes to be passed on just purely because they think they're entitled to. And then trying to compare it to illnesses and diseases and saying that it's about mass extinction is literally just pushing the idea that women are there to be incubators. This type of conversation, unfortunately, screams control and entitlement.
People take away from seeing that clip of the Diary of a CEO, those fucking weirdos talking about what they need to do to intervene with all of these lonely men that aren't being given women, essentially, is that men see women as a commodity. In the natural world, men compete. And guess what? Some males in the animal kingdom, they never get a fuck. They never get to fuck. They never get to have offspring because they're not good enough, because the females deem them not worthy of it. And then guess what? When humans are doing the same thing, when Darwinism is happening because y'all ain't shit and you keep fucking murdering us and you keep making the world fucking awful, right? And so we stop fucking you and we stop having your offspring. And now they're talking about how they're gonna intervene. They're gonna correct that. Yeah, but we're overreacting. It's not a big deal, right?
You're saying there that as a society, we should take on more of the responsibility for some of these big fundamental issues that men and people in crisis can't solve for themselves.
I mean, you. I mean, your listeners as individuals need to take responsibility. And it's not that you have to take responsibility. It's not fair to you to be responsible for someone else. But unless everyone who is listening to this podcast goes out and literally hugs a man, no one else is going to do it. Because if you don't do it, who's going to do it? You can't rely on society. We've been relying on society to fix the problem. It's not working.
That's right. His solution for what's going on with men is that we as individuals need to go hug them. What? Welcome back for the unintended part 2 of me talking about this dude, Dr. K. Now, when I posted a video critiquing this man, I got like 3 main comments. Number 1 being, he's not talking about women making up for the problem with men. He's talking about putting systems into place. Hence me showing the clip where he literally says we need to hug men. 2 being he's taken out of context. And 3 being, I don't understand this doctor. He's a really nice guy. Let me show you the other things this nice man has to say.
So men in today's society are not allowed to complain. So if you complain and you're a successful person or a privileged person, everyone is going to think you're arrogant. Everyone is going to think, oh my God, who's this fucking guy? This guy doesn't know what my life is like. How does he have any right to complain? But now we need to stop for a second and think about what it does to your psychology when you as a human being are not allowed to articulate your suffering. I've worked with people who have grown up in abusive households where children will say to their parents, Mommy, Daddy, I'm hurting. And the parent smacks them across the face. How dare you? You're so lucky. You don't realize the sacrifices I make for you. It's traumatizing to the child. This is what we're doing to the generation of men. People are saying, I am suffering. For 100 years, men have been themselves. The most dangerous thing for a man under 45 is themselves.
And quick question, who is the greatest threat to women? Oh, okay. Notice how he infantilizes men immediately, comparing men not being able to complain to a child being by their parent. So much to unpack here. Number 1, in my experience, being friends with men, dating men, loving men, I have never felt like men cannot complain. The internet is full of men complaining. This comment section will have men complaining. There is a difference between not having the ability to complain and not liking the feedback you receive. Also, we are not these men's mommies and daddies. We are not their parents. We do not have a responsibility to them in that way. So saying that us not validating a complaint is the same thing as a parent striking their child is so bizarre. He does that throughout this episode. There's multiple times that he compares grown men to children. And additionally, I don't think the objection is to the fact that men have complaints. I think it's 2 things. 1, the ways in which they choose to complain or show their displeasure, which statistically includes violence. And 2, when we think about the scale of the injury, this would be a much better conversation once we get past the point that men are taking out their frustration on women and each other with violence. Then I think we could have a conversation more so about how we react to people complaining. And speaking of complaints, mine aren't over because he says more atrocious things. Stay tuned for part 3, I guess.
The issue here, though, is that the conversation is already harmful by the question that they're asking or the solution that they're trying to find by saying, how do we help incels and harmful men find partners, instead of, why do incels exist? Why do harmful men exist? Trying to create systems to help incels get a partner is still just, it's not going to work because incels still exist. Incels can't find a partner for a reason. Women are staying away from incels. Women have opted out of dating altogether for this reason, because they're dangerous. We are purposefully avoiding them. Helping incels get partners puts women at risk. Unless the systems that are put into place to intervene is education for young boys to prevent radicalization of red pill content and getting to the root of the manosphere, all of that. The intervention doesn't sound like it's benefiting women at all.
Average and insecure men are the ones that care about the birth rate declining. The Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett, he did a podcast with Healthy Gamer GG, who is a psychiatrist, and they're talking about the declining birth rate and how it could possibly be tied to evolution. And essentially, Healthy Gamer GG is like, well, we need to intervene because you would intervene with cancer, right? You would intervene with genocide, right? People not having children is not the same as a cancer diagnosis or genocide, because in order for cancer and genocide to take place, there has to be a current population in order for that to happen. We're talking about not bringing people here in the first place where cancer and genocide cannot eradicate people. So what type of fucking argument is that? Oh, I'll tell you what type of argument is that. It's an emotionally inducing argument to get men up in a frenzy and get even more angry and intervene by R-wording women in order for them to pass down their lineage because they don't have anything else going for themselves. And so the most biggest accomplishment that they'll be able to have is tell people, hey, I was able to manipulate and get some woman to hate herself so much that she decided to sacrifice her body and give up her body to give me a human that I'm not even going to take care of to the capacity that she's going to take care of. No fucking thank you. Okay, no fucking thank you. It's so funny to me that the gender that participates the least when it comes to childbearing, all they have to do is have an orgasm. That's the only requirement to become a father. Have an orgasm. Boom, you're a father. Not the actual pregnancy itself, not the actually giving birth, not the actual childbearing and raising. The men are not participating in this. It's so funny to me how the gender that is not contributing anything but a nut bust to bringing children into this world are the same people that are sitting here talking about how they need to intervene. Because at the end of the day, they don't care about humans being here. Because why would you want to subject a group of humans to come into an earth where they would have to worry about cancer, worry about genocide, worry about homelessness, worrying about people having to intervene on their reproductive system? Because it has nothing to do with that. These men don't care about the declining birth rate. They care about subjugating women under pregnancy and seeing them tired and exhausted and lose their life and struggle and get set back financially and mentally struggle with postpartum depression, mentally struggle with having to bear a crazy amount of responsibilities because they have to work a job for their survival and the survival of their child, while also making sure that their child is getting all other needs met emotionally, mentally, physically, etc., etc. And what's even funnier is that they do it under this very like linguistic type of high scholastic ability to make it seem as if they are these well-astute individuals that just have so much knowledge on what the fuck that they're talking about. At the end of the day, humans are animals. Across all species, there is one commonality. They do not procreate under environments that are stressful. No sane person that is aware and accepting and understanding of what type of world we're currently living in would ever want to bring a life into this. It's all about control. They get off on seeing women miserable and knowing that a woman will be weak enough for them to be able to put their boot on her fucking neck.
I keep seeing this Diary of a CEO episode pop up with some guy, and they're kind of discussing essentially the male loneliness epidemic, and men aren't dating and they aren't having babies as much, and the birth rate's dropping, and it's very Cheddar Bob-esque. It's very I shot myself in the leg, and then you like look around like, oh, who shot me, bro? You shot your fucking self. Like, this shit is such a own goal. Like, self-burn is ridiculous, because like they're talking and they're like, yeah, like, well, if if you had cancer, a bunch of people cancer, do you intervene? Well, yeah, like if this happened, would you intervene? Yeah, like, so men are having trouble having babies and getting with women and getting married and dating, so we should intervene. Sir, what's the intervention you're speaking of? What's the systems is dating. That's the system. You date. Women allow you to date them sometimes. You ask them and they say yes. What are the systems? Do tell.
Everyone seems to be talking about the recent Diary of the CEO episode and a discussion that happened around declining birth rates. But if you've been paying attention, you might have heard that term a lot lately from any number of Republican figures, from J.D. Vance to Stephen Miller to Erica Kirk and Candace Owens, or from Elon Musk, who tweeted out to his 225 million Twitter followers on the algorithm he personally controls that low birth rates are the biggest threat to the West, which he then immediately followed with a tweet that said that birth control is to blame for feminism. This is not a one-off. It is a coordinated effort and strategy that they've been building for years. And now that you've noticed it, I guarantee you are going to be hearing the phrase declining birth rates way more often. And the reason for this is that they're hoping by framing the conversation in a real data point around declining birth rates, it will give them the runway to excuse and get away with eliminating access to birth control, workplace protections for women, and many of the other feminist wins that they believe are keeping women from their rightful place in the home. So let's be crystal clear, declining birth rates are not a feminist failure, but a policy failure. And if they were actually interested in fixing it, they would be asking why people aren't having kids. Instead, they're doubling down on blaming feminism, birth control, women working, or even higher education under the guise of concern. The real reason that families, backed by data and nonpartisan surveys, are waiting to have kids boils down to the fact that the United States is a maternal health nightmare. Maternal mortality has skyrocketed. Overall maternal deaths increased 27% in just 4 years. The United States has the highest maternal death rate of any wealthy nation. Racial disparities are devastating. Black women are nearly 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white women. And the overturning of Roe made everything worse. Abortion bans are making pregnancy even more dangerous than they already are. And we have not even gotten to the cost. Raising a child to age 18 in the United States is estimated at over $300,000. If you add on student debt, unaffordable childcare, housing costs, wage stagnation, it is no mystery why people are holding off. It is not about health. It's definitely not about protecting women. This is ultimately about continuing to lay the groundwork for coming after birth control. So let me connect the dots for you really quickly. In 2022, Justin Clarence Thomas openly called to reconsider Griswold v. Connecticut, the case that guarantees the right to birth control. And basically immediately following, conservative influencers began flooding social media with anti-contraception talking points, which we see to this day. And lawmakers have started to introduce bills to limit or ban access to birth control, all to desensitize us. This is a playbook, and it's playing out right now. And in order to stop it, you need to notice it's happening. So this is the first of many conversations. Let me know what questions you have in the comments. We'll keep the conversation going.
But I want to understand if there's a counterpoint to that. Should society intervene?
So go back and watch that video. The host is saying that most men between the age of 15 to 50 will not have a chance to pass on their gene, their bloodline, or their lineage. And I believe that this question is being asked, or it is being discussed in bad faith. First of all, why are you talking to a man about passing on lineage or bloodline? And why are you asking, should society intervene? Let's go back. The only thing that can bring a man's bloodline into existence is a woman. A woman can turn the spiritual into the physical. That's number one. So shouldn't a woman be sitting across from you and asking you this, or answering this for you? Number two, you say society should intervene, or should they? And what does that look like to you? And there's something about this host. I think he's kind of low-key red pill, but he tries to do it on an intellectual level so it doesn't jog you. But something about him just sets me off. Like, I feel like he has a lot of work to do as far as his masculinity, but that's neither here nor there. I believe that most men do not deserve a lineage. Most men do not deserve a bloodline. If you know that a product is broken or faulty, why would you keep producing it? You wouldn't, right? You would let that model just cease to exist. And a lot of these men are faulty and they are broken. Women aren't even asking most men to provide. And when I say financially, right, we're not asking for you to go out and break your back. We're simply asking for you to be a good person. And you can't even do that. The things that cost you nothing, you won't even give. So women have decided to stop interacting with men. Yes, as they should. Women are tired of birthing their oppressor. Look at the state of our world. It's always domination, subjugation, colonization, mass destruction. Look at the men in power and how awful they are. And look at the men underneath them who don't even have a backbone to call out the very things that are destroying their community. So why would you birth more of this? Most men do not deserve a bloodline. Most men do not deserve a lineage, because why would a woman keep birthing her oppressor? These men are faulty products. So why would you keep producing them? No, you end it. And women have been doing the right thing. We are no longer interested in birthing our oppressor, the mass murdering, the rapists, the men who stand by idly and do nothing, the men who take up space, the men who won't even apply themselves to being a good person. They are faulty products, and women have decided that we will close our wombs and no longer allow that very thing to exist on this planet.
Now, I don't know about y'all, but me as a woman, I would say that this should scare the shit out of women. Men talking like this and men having this same mindset and thought process should scare women. And which is I'm always telling y'all, arm yourselves, because they're literally changing the laws to fit what the incels think, because the ones writing the laws are the kings and the leaders of the incels. And I don't think women are taking this serious enough. I don't think women are like halting the birth rate enough and quick enough, because I still see women getting pregnant. They don't see you as human. They want you to keep birthing to keep the machine going. And we've been talking about it for at least 5 years, and women are still not paying attention. So I'm praying that this year, 2026, will be the year when women finally realize the amount of danger that we are in because of this thought process, because of them not seeing you as human, because of them seeing you as dollar signs. They see you as a money maker for them. Like you're birthing the slaves into the system that they need. And that's scary when you're around greedy men running these corporations. They're actually trying to replace you with robots so they can make more money, but they're going to realize they can't replace you with robots to birth their children. They're trying, but they can't. So that means they're going to come up with as many ways as possible to force you to have their kids, because they need money. They need white supremacy. They need patriarchy to keep going. And only women can do that. So ladies, 2026, January 8th, share these videos, like, comment, and subscribe. And let's get this show on the road and let's wake these women up. I'll talk to you later.